Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 27th of March. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather with us tonight. And remember, you can always find your latest weather information anytime at weather.gov/Alaska. Once you click on that page, you'll go to your local forecast office, whether that's Juneau, Fairbanks, or Anchorage, serving whatever part of Alaska you're in. You can also find out the very latest information from the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. And pretty soon, in the next couple of weeks, kind of soon anyway, you'll be getting the spring flood outlook and breakup information. Not too long from now, it will be coming around the corner, and we'll be monitoring the ice situation along many of your most favorite rivers in Alaska. You can always call 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. It's open 24 hours a day. You just kind of punch in your numbers there and you'll get the forecast. And if you can't find what you want, whether it's on the National Tsunami Warning Center side, if it's on the Alaska Pacific River Forecast side, the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, or just your general old weather forecast, please let me know. I'm happy to help you and serve you any way I can. Let's take a look at some of the snow. We got a little snow down in southeast today. The good news is, first of all, the winter storm warning that you did have in place around the Juneau region is now dropped or rescinded. They've canceled it early simply because it looks like for the remainder of the evening there may be rain and snow, but it's not going to accumulate any further than it already has. So what do you have now? As of mid-afternoon, we had 9.6 inches at Elfin Cove at the Juneau Airport, 9 inches on the bubble, and 8.6 inches there at the Juneau Forecast Office a little bit further up the hill. Out at Dehne Road at the wastewater treatment plant, 8.2 inches of new snow there. Tenakee Springs, 8.0 inches. Auk Bay and Pelican both had about 6 inches or more. So a little bit of snow there, and boy, is it that wet, messy, slushy kind of stuff, just like what you see there in the background. Be careful moving that out of the way. We all know that's heavy stuff, and you know, as people like us get a little bit further on in our years, the back starts to hurt a little bit more when you see snow like that. So be careful out there and enjoy it for what you can. Here's a look at the satellite picture now. Over the last 12 hours or so, you can see several areas of low pressure. One of those working right into northern parts of southeast. As that worked its way into the Panhandle, it really was a very efficient snow machine there across northern parts of the Panhandle for sure. Another wave is located out across the west. We're seeing snow spread into the southwest and into the let's say the upper Kuskokwim and parts of the western interior, but it's not quite as efficient as a snow machine as what we saw there in northern parts of southeast. So there is snow, and there will continue to be snow out across western parts of the interior for the next several days as a result. Generally dry weather, though, across the eastern interior and up north. Maybe some blowing snow from time to time, but nothing terribly widespread or really a whole lot to write home about. You can look out west and notice there is some colder air showing up on the satellite picture. That's kind of that mackerel sky that we can see shaping up there west of St. Paul, north of Adak, and northeast of Shemya. And our main corridor of fast-moving winds there, as you'll see in the jet stream coming up in the aviation section in just a little bit, is that west and southwesterly flow, and that is just south of most of the Panhandle and really most of Alaska. We've got kind of a split flow around Alaska right now, so there's no big driving force that's pushing its way into the region, and so we're not having any large-scale storms develop right now or really any major weather forcing that's creating more snow like what we've already seen move through southeast. So where are we going? It looks like a generally quiet week. You can see a boundary sitting right about in here. If you watch this loop one more time, you'll be able to see that system just sit right along that boundary. And because of that, it's keeping a lot of the really deep cold from working its way into south central and southeast. The front is working through southeast right now about 997 millibars. The low out across the west, 992, and high pressure is really not horribly strong up across northern parts of the interior at 1,018 millibars, and just a little bit of a breeze there across the Beaufort Seacoast, allowing that snow to blow around there. A little bit of snow around St. Lawrence Island and just north into the Bering Strait. Periods of rain and snow across southwest, so it is a little bit on the milder side there. And this area of low pressure, and others like it in the last week, have sent that southerly flow northward, and it's pushing away ice across north-facing coastlines especially around the Chukchi Seacoast. We'll be able to see that here coming up with your marine forecast in just a bit when we check on the ice edge and the analysis for this afternoon. Let's take a look at tonight. There will be more rain and snow in parts of southeast, especially northern southeast, but again, that heavy accumulating period of snow is going to be over now. So watch for continued wet and slush and snow there. Further down the coast, a better chance that'll be rainfall. And there is an area of low pressure just to your south. That's at 1,020 millibars, and most of that's going to stay generally south of the region for tonight. High pressure sitting across the Alaska Peninsula. It chalks in at 1,031 millibars. It's a little bit on the stronger side, but undercutting that is low pressure right across Norton Sound, and around that will be a pretty broad area of unsettled weather. It's not going to be horribly strong. There won't be a tremendous amount of snow piling up, but I'll be surprised to see a little bit of it there on the ground in the morning. Pockets of clouds spreading their way eastward and toward Fairbanks. Northward, fairly dry conditions there as a trough of low pressure hovers on the lee side or the downwind side of the Brooks Range, so that helps to clear things out a little bit. Notice that low pressure is still in the vicinity of the eastern Gulf by tomorrow afternoon. That's now at 1,020 millibars. The good news is there isn't any major disturbance again to really focus precipitation or wind. So as far as aviation concerns go, as you'll see in just a little bit, there's really not any widespread turbulence issues after we get past tomorrow morning. Most of that should subside across the west and the southwest and areas in the north. For tomorrow in southeast, mainly rain showers, a few snow showers at higher terrain up across the western interior, Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula, all the way up to Kotzebue Sound and Kotzebue itself, in fact, Kivalina. You're probably looking at some light snow throughout the daytime tomorrow. A broad area of low pressure sits across Alaska and also across the north coast, and that's separating that big, deep cold again from most of the region. Once we get into Thursday, you'll see that remaining area of low pressure across the Gulf is still trying to get its way out of the region, and in fact it manages to kind of sneak its way northward just a little bit. That could bring some rain into southern southeast, but most areas up north should be drier. High pressure across the west is still pushing the disturbances eastward, and as that happens, you'll see some snow showers make their way in toward Fairbanks and North Pole, down toward Healy. South of that, it looks generally dry but cloudy. And west of that, we'll probably see light snow into Norton Sound, probably McGrath and southwest coast. And also another band shaping up from Kotzebue Sound and toward Ambler, and then probably just east of McGrath. So areas of light snow will be possible there. Out to the west, another wave is developing off of eastern Asia. That's down to about 984 millibars, but it's got a lot to work through as this high pressure system is fairly stout. So in between that, a better chance that you're going to run into some stratus and areas of fog from St. Lawrence Island southward toward the central and western chain. This is looking at the end of the week again. Here's a look at temperatures for tomorrow morning. For southeast, we expect to see readings generally above freezing, mid to upper 30s there. South central, mid to upper 20s to low 30s, around 34 in Kodiak, 32 in Homer, around 26 in Anchorage. As you move up toward Fairbanks, 2 above 0. North of the Yukon, though, we're still in sub-zero land, anywhere from 5 to about 15 below, even closer to 20 below around Arctic Village. 7 below in Kaktovik, 16 above for Nome. Kotzebue, expect a low of 11 by tomorrow morning. For most in southwest, below freezing, but still in the mid to upper 20s for many. McGrath, about 25. Bristol Bay temperatures just shy of 30, and the southwest coast of the Alaska Peninsula out toward the Pribilofs, you're looking at lows in the upper 20s and lower 30s. Highs tomorrow there, back in the mid to upper 30s. In fact, some areas closer to 40 degrees around the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay back in the mid 30s and above freezing for you. For the western interior, Galena looking at temps above freezing tomorrow, around 35 or so, 25 in Nome. Shishmaref, look for a high of 20. Barrow looking at 8. As you head into southeast, temperatures could soar into the 40s, south central upper 30s and lower 40s tomorrow. Cool off again into the mid 20s for many in south central. Southeast, anywhere from lower to mid 30s there. The North Slope about 0, but not a whole lot colder. For the west coast, teens and 20s. Nome about 14, Savunga 21. 28 degrees around St. Paul and 20s and 30s for southwest. Look for high temperatures on your Thursday, back in the mid 30s for many. Up north, teens and 20s along the North Slope for Thursday afternoon.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather now. IFR conditions will take over a large part of western Alaska, the Seward Peninsula into Kotzebue Sound and Kotzebue itself, and down into southwestern Alaska, east of Cape Newenham, and generally north of Lake Iliamna. We'll also see some morning IFR across the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, and into parts of the Kenai Peninsula. Expect fairly widespread MVFR conditions in the northern half, and IFR across some of the higher terrain for southeast, with MVFR lingering offshore. As we get into the afternoon, ceilings and visibility will improve across south central, but will linger with IFR across many of your mountain passes there, including Rainy, Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, and into Tanita Pass. MVFR conditions will be fairly widespread across southeast, Prince William Sound, and all the way across the middle and lower Yukon and the upper Koyukuk, as well as parts of Kotzebue Sound and Norton Sound once again, with some improvements noted out west, and MVFR conditions will linger across the Bering Sea. As we get into Thursday morning, IFR is expected to stretch all the way along the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range into the upper Tanana and the upper Yukon valleys. IFR is still lingering around some of the higher terrain of the misty fjords, and MVFR conditions linger for most of southeast, for that matter, inside and outside of the coast. Southwest, you're looking at IFR to start your Thursday morning. Watch for patchy IFR across some parts of the Tanita Pass region, as well as the Talkeetnas and into the Alaska Range. As we get to Thursday afternoon, improvements are expected to continue across south central. Southeast looks to clear out entirely, and IFR conditions should linger across some parts of the central and western Brooks Range along the south-facing slopes once again, with MVFR fairly widespread across the interior. Here's your pass conditions now for Wednesday. Look for AKwx Pass to head over to MVFR conditions as we go through the day. Adigan Pass looks like it might just sneak out of the day with VFR, but MVFR to the west obviously will be approaching. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions throughout the day. A lean over toward IFR in Rainy Pass from a start at MVFR. That's what we'll find at Windy Pass, with a morning start for your Wednesday in marginal, but probably heading for instrument flight rule. And the same goes for Isabel Pass, looking for IFR there. Mentasta Pass leans over toward marginal conditions as we go through the midday. And Tanita Pass, we expect to see IFR really through most of the day there, with Portage Pass starting at IFR with some improvements noted throughout your Wednesday afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions most of the day. Freezing levels, nothing much to see out across the west. The elevated freezing levels are pretty much well to the south thanks to high pressure in charge there. So we'll focus on the eastern Gulf, and you can see levels changing there between 2 and about 8,000 feet. Most of the Gulf, most of the mainland, I should say, is well below freezing at this point for your Wednesday morning. So no threats of any significant icing because of that issue. But for this, we still have some elevated moisture and enough cold air aloft, of course, to produce some icing threat. It's generally isolated and moderate. Anywhere from about 4,000 to 5,000 feet across the north and the west and into the eastern interior, and then out across the Pribilofs and parts of the southern Bering Sea, generally above 4,000 feet. Again, the threat is generally isolated and moderate. Our jet stream right now shows kind of a split flow. We've got our main driver coming in across eastern Asia, taking a quick jump across the Bering, and then getting back into that main corridor of fast-moving air, around 70 to 110 knots or so. And then up across the north, we have high pressure that's splitting that flow up and over and keeping the really cold, dry air from making it into most of Alaska for right now. This is going to change as this slides eastward a little bit. We'll get into more of that colder, drier flow in more locations. But for right now, the main driving force is kind of sidelined a little bit, you might say. Here's a look at the 9,000-foot winds, and you can see high pressure up across the Beaufort Sea and a high across the North Pacific. That's giving us a gentle westerly flow into southeastern Alaska. And then that main corridor of main flow is moving in across southwestern Alaska, and that ridge is holding right now across the interior. So wind speeds typically at 9,000 feet are pretty light, 15 to 25. At 3,000 feet, we still have that westerly flow working in, a little bit of an influence from the east, from that high pressure ridge up across the Beaufort Sea, but generally a west to easterly flow is found. We have weak ridging happening across parts of southwestern Alaska, a pretty quick burst of wind here just south of the chain, so if you're flying southward, keep an eye on that. Otherwise, northerly offshore winds for southeastern Alaska running around 15 to about 35 knots. What does that mean for turbulence? Not much. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about. In fact, most of what you see on the chart today will really be confined to a morning time issue. We expect conditions to really ease up as we get into the afternoon. Right now, across central and northern parts of southeast, below 4,000 feet, some morning chop that could reach into the considerable moderate range there around Juneau, out toward Pelican, and northward toward Haines and Skagway, and then out across southwest and just west of Chignik and the Kodiak Island region, as well as Cape Newenham, up toward areas around the Bristol Bay region. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
We have cleaned over 1,500 miles of shoreline now.
Basically, it comes down to just human muscle. I mean, we use chainsaws and knives.
We find stuff from like Russia and China and Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia. It really doesn't matter where it comes from. We all just have to clean it out.
Our goal right now in the next 10 or 11 days before the end of this year is just to see how much we can collect before we get to remove it.
What you see on the beach is a fraction of what's out there. You can pretty much break it down into 3 or 4 things. Water bottles, a lot of water bottles, styrofoam, fishing nets, fishing buoys. And that's 99% of what you find on the beach. Basically just go along with chainsaws and muscle and get the garbage, put it in sacks, and then from there we haul it up above the log jam so it's out of any heavy surf or winter storms if it's gonna stay there for the year, and put it in super sacks. So yeah, we just progressively work down the coast, just day in and day out.
We have like daily goals for ourselves that like if we're working at a pretty good rate, we like to keep on pace with about like, I don't know, about 20 to 25 super sacks a day. So this is pile 102, and in this pile right now we have 2 super sacks and 1 set of buoys. June 23rd here, this is what we've done today. We're up to 25 super sacks on the day, and I think for now we'll call it and just keep cleaning until tomorrow.
My name is Hannah, and I represent a organization in Japan called Japan Environmental Action Network. With over 20 people working together to clean up the beach, this is amazing. Like, we all need to work together to, clean up the beach as much as possible. So like every single time I go back to Japan, I talk to the fishermen, and the fishermen's like, it's a joke, but they're like, if you find any buoy with my logo, you gotta bring it back, and it's like, always looking out for that stuff.
The crew's awesome. I mean, we're all skiers or snowboarders, and we're all friends. I mean, we're all good friends. My dad started it. He's the man behind the desk. He makes the ball roll for sure. He works hard. He doesn't give up easy, which is good.
This stuff is uplifted quite a ways during the earthquake. Well, I think my bag's about full already. Yeah. I'm gonna take a quick look back in here, see what else is back here. The thing about marine debris is it's kind of a hidden problem. Unless you're out there, especially on these remote beaches that are so heavily impacted, people don't see it. I remember probably a good 20 years ago, I was out on the outside of Montague Island, flew out there, and I was just utterly astounded by all the garbage out there. You walk out there and you wade through this stuff and you go, this isn't right, this shouldn't happen.
I think a lot of it's just awareness. I mean, I've been boating out here for a long time, and I wasn't even aware of how extensive the marine debris problem is out here, but it's a consumer world out there for sure. I mean, I don't know where people's values are, I guess, but mine is you got to kind of have a little bit of respect for the environment, and considering we live in it, especially in Alaska. I mean, a lot of people like the outdoors and like to be part of the outdoors. That's why they live here, and it's they don't necessarily want to see it trashed.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of your sea ice analysis today, and you'll see this broad area of white across the North Slope and into the Chukchi and the Beaufort Seas and into the Bering Strait, but we start getting into a lot of this blue color. That's the marginal ice, concentrations of ice, not thickness, but concentration of ice that's less than 80%. And that could mean areas of open water. And in fact, some areas north and west of St. Lawrence Island, that's what we think. There is areas that is substantially lower than 80%. The same goes for areas across the northwest coast, especially in Barrow. And you can't really see it under the word Wainwright and out toward Barrow, Nukiavik. But north and west of that, there is some likely very low concentration ice, if not open water there northwest of the coast, due to that persistent southerly and warm flow for the last several weeks. This southern edge will continue to be eroded and push northward as we go through the rest of the week. This is updated today. You can always get the very latest at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. Here's a look at the forecast for southeast tomorrow. We're looking at a southerly flow on the inside, anywhere from about 15 knots or so on the inside with 3-foot seas, and a gentle onshore push of 15-knot winds with seas ranging from about 8 to 9 feet as we get into your Wednesday. For Thursday, a little bit more of a north and westerly flow coming down the outer coast, 15 to 20 knots there. You're looking at 5 to 6-foot seas on the outside, and on the inside, winds come up to about 25 knots in the Lynn Canal, a 5-foot sea there, 4-foot seas as you head further southward into Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait there, again with that northerly flow on your Thursday. For Wednesday in South Central, fair weather for the most part. Westerlies across Prince William Sound, small seas up to 2 feet, 6 to 7-foot seas across the North and Western Gulf, 15 to 20 knot winds there from the west. And through the Cook Inlet region, you're looking at about 25 knots. A little bit of a stronger flow here with 6-foot seas coming down toward the Barren Islands and just outside of Kashamak Bay. As we get into Thursday, look for more of a northwesterly turn all the way through Prince William Sound, but we still have small seas there, so good news there if you're traveling through. 2 to 5-foot seas across southern Cook Inlet, around the Barren Islands, anywhere from 5-foot seas from the north and west, and northwesterlies outside of Resurrection Bay, 15 knots there with that 5-foot sea on Thursday. Inside Bristol Bay, a light westerly flow, 15 knots and 5-foot seas there, 7-foot seas further down the coast. Westerlies coming up toward Kodiak Island and over Shelikof Strait. They're a little stronger, around 20 knots with a 4-foot sea there. For Thursday, winds and seas get a little bit smaller and lighter, looking for 10-knot winds in Shelikof Strait, 10 to 15-knot winds across the western Gulf down the Pacific coast. And across the Bering Sea coast, really small seas, only 1-foot seas expected inside of Bristol Bay, 2-foot seas down the Alaska Peninsula on that westerly wind. For the Aleutians, you don't see that every day. A northwesterly flow, about 10 knots, maybe 20 knots between Kiska and Shemya, but this is a calm weather pattern thanks to high pressure sitting atop. Look for 3 to 4, even 5-foot seas across the region, generally small seas across the North Pacific. looks like a good day to get out there and enjoy that if you can. For Thursday, things change a little bit. It couldn't last forever, could it? Easterlies blowing across the North Pacific coastline, 20 to 25 knots with 12 to 13 foot seas developing. A light easterly flow continues across the central and eastern chain, and out west you can see 20 to 30 knot winds with 11 foot seas coming up there with that east, and then a sudden sharp turn from the south as the next wave of weather moves in from the west. A westerly onshore flow across the YK Delta and into Norton Sound over the ice, anywhere from 15 to 20 knot winds, let's say. Across St. Matthew, 4 foot seas, 5 foot seas around St. Paul and St. George, and 6 foot seas coming into the Kuskokwim Delta region. As we get into Thursday, winds are still generally light, 10 to 15 knots with that southwesterly flow, but you can see we're starting to tap into that western storm a little bit around St. Matthew with that southerly flow coming up sharply to 25 knots, and 6 foot seas expected there for your Thursday. Across the North Slope, looking at a stronger south and easterly flow. Remember, we were talking about the potential for some blowing snow in this region. This would be why. Across the western coast in Chukchi, you can see a lighter flow, anywhere from 5 to 15 knots or so. 3 foot seas in the open waters around St. Lawrence Island. For Thursday, a little bit more of a south and westerly flow continues. Remember, each day with southerly flow, we're pushing that ice a little bit further away from the coast. 15 knots there and light southerlies across the Beaufort Seacoast. That blowing snow shouldn't be as much of a problem on Thursday as a result of that. Here's tonight's weather once again. Periods of rain and snow showers will decrease in their intensity around the capital city and points northward toward Haines and Skagway. After a day of 6 to 8, even 9 inches of slush in the region there, that should be winding down. You might see some additional light accumulations, but the heavy stuff should be done. Snow showers continue out west from the Seward Peninsula all the way down into Bristol Bay. Don't be surprised to get some light accumulations with that. That will continue as we head into Wednesday. Watch for some light snow around the south central region, including Anchorage as well tonight. High pressure sets up, though, and really stabilizes the winds and seas across the chain, but also sets up the next weather maker to move in from the west as you look out toward Thursday, and a little bit of weather down south. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.